Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Caleb.
This is Carl.
And this is Sean.
And welcome back. It's Romulans Bearing Gifts, episode 79. And as I'm sure you can tell from the little roll call there, we're a person short today. You know, it's been a busy year for the crew here, and even though we've been trying to get together, and we thought we were going to get together today, some things came up, and yeah, Eric had to bow out.
It's going to be fun. It's our rare opportunity to let everyone know what we really think of Eric. So this will be great.
There you go. Yeah. Where's those fake notes? Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, and I'm excited to be here today because Sean is back with us once again, and you know he's been joining us in lately to talk about some new Star Trek stuff. And I know you're a fan of TNG, but somehow all these years you've never seen an episode of Star Trek, the original series. So very happy to have a chance to rectify that today.
Yes, this is the first time I've ever seen one all the way through.
All right, now hang on now, because I was curious. How did this episode get chosen? Who chose this episode?
I chose this one. I don't know if it was necessarily the right pick for the first one for Sean to see. It was just one that I'd had on the back burner for a while. I've been waiting to pull out, and this seemed like the chance to do it. All
right. So it was one that you were interested in. We did not know that this was going to be the premiere for Sean. This is okay. I was just curious how this. All right. Let's.
I mean, I used to have all the Star Trek movies on VHS,
Sure.
So I'm familiar with the characters and all that. And everybody, I mean, Spock is so iconic that I feel like even if I never watched any of that, then somehow I would still know that Spock is supposed to be a logical Vulcan and all that, because that's what this is about. But I will tell you, after watching this episode, I went to Amazon, and right now I hold in my right hand Season 1 on Blu-ray.
What?
Oh, hey, look at that. Wow.
Right. Converted after one episode. Got another one.
No,
another one.
I need some sort of like good sci-fi fix, because Doctor Who ain't doing it, whether or not it's on the air. It hasn't done it for a long time. So this seemed like the perfect thing. So now I'm going to have to get them all because I'm a completionist all the way through Discovery or whatever that new one is.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that one.
Oh, okay. We're not going to start. But well, I mean, I'm very excited that you have begun this journey. I remember when I first started watching original series Star Trek. Again, when I was a kid, before Next Gen came out, I used to watch the original series. And when I first started watching it, I would watch it to make fun of it. The effects were bad. The acting was interesting. All of that. But after I started watching, I watched a couple episodes, couple more episodes, and then just one day it kind of clicked. I got what the essence of Star Trek was about, and then I was hooked. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned the hokey effects and all that. I mean, I'm a big fan of classic Doctor Who.
Yeah,
it's actually the later Doctor Who, like in the late 80s, is pretty much hokier than this. So, aside from a couple little things that involve some, clumsy blocking, for lack of a better word, the effects and the cheesy stuff, I didn't mind that at all.
Well, and are you watching the remastered episodes?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I felt really dirty. But that was
no, it's all right it's just that I'm just gonna say the remastered smooth a lot of stuff out. If you watch the true original ones, And, I mean, granted, you're a fan of Doctor Who, so, it's going to hurt you that much.
Mhm.
But you're going to see scrambled eggs, spray-painted plastic bag, spray-painted foam of various types coming at you. So, but the remaster, they did a lot that really... Because I had not even seen this one. Okay, so we're beating around. I haven't talked about it yet. Galileo 7 is the one that we're doing. I had not seen Galileo 7 remastered before. So this was my first time seeing it all, high res and computer graphics and all of that in there. It takes a bit of the edge off of the original camp of effects. But anyway, I'm jumping around.
I will say this is the first time watching one of these remastered ones where it really did kind of stand out and jar me just a little bit. Like, it looks great. I have no complaints about how they put the effects together, but it's so clear that it's not a part of the original show that it was a little bit like, oh, that's a slight bit jarring every time we saw them.
It is a noticeable difference. It's a noticeable difference.
Yeah, and that, the blue or these not just Blu-ray, but high resolution. I noticed that you can even see the makeup on their faces, especially Spock.
Oh,
yeah.
That's how clear the picture was.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, yeah, good. I'm excited.
Yeah, Galileo 7.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious for you, Carl. Was this one that you remembered coming in when it came up for you?
Oh, of course. I definitely remember this one. So yes, yes, it is. It is an iconic one, particularly, obviously, and I'll let you all discuss it. But when it comes to Spock and Bones, I mean, this is Spock and Bones. This one is, you really get to see the tension and dichotomy played out between those two in this one. But again, I've seen it. I'm gonna leave some space for the newbies here.
Yeah, and I was a little nervous bringing this one out as Sean's first pick for TOS, because I know on some of those Strange New Worlds ones, Sean, you're a little bit like, this Spock, I'm not really that interested in this character. I don't know if that was just in the new series or in general.
I have a question for y'all. This is the 17th episode. Okay. In the 16 before this, are there any episodes where you learn about Spock and logic and no emotion, et cetera, et cetera? Is that dealt with before, or is this the first time?
Quick answer is yes. The quick answer is yes.
Okay.
We see it manifest in different ways. But yes, we know that Spock is alien. He's Vulcan and human. We know he's battling with the emotion buried under the logic. So we know that's going on with him.
Okay.
Yeah. And we know the crew of the Enterprise can frequently be xenophobic towards him and his ways. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of bringing it all to a head in this one episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Because this is really a Spock episode. I mean, we've got the aliens, the big giants. We've got the thing with that idiot. Well, he really wasn't an idiot, but he was
the commissioner.
He was just kind of annoying.
Which one are you talking about? The ambassador? Which one are you talking about? I don't know which.
The commissioner that was on the Enterprise, who's like, "You've got 19 minutes."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
It's always that guy around. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Stuffy, by the book, loser guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the Pertwee era or something. But there was what I also really enjoyed about this is of the 7 crew members, you get to know most of them pretty well. There's really 2. We know our 3 main characters, Bones, Scotty, and Spock, but there's the 2 guys, Bowman and Gaetano. Gaetano?
Yeah.
Is it Bowman? Okay. You get to know those guys really well too, especially Bowman. What does he want to do? He wants to bury the guys that died. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I think they all but say that, he's a spiritual man, which is exactly what the opposite, I think, of what Spock is. I think Spock has a religion, but that's not brought up until the movies, maybe. I'm speaking out of turn, but yeah.
That was the proper foil for Spock in this situation, because there was, a respectful idea of humanity that was being pitted against him from many different directions. So Boma was one individual that like you said, had that, kind of a spiritual component to him that, you just can't leave a man, die. I want to die a human. There was that. There's always Bones, who is, Dr. McCoy is always sort of, putting forth the human perspective on things. But so what was really interesting in this episode is Spock was getting it from every direction here, because normally it is a simple balance, Bones saying something countering to Spock, and it is thin and as light and as direct as that. This is a rare opportunity where the circumstance and situation that they were in started creeping in on Spock. Most of the time he's right, or most of the time, his logic is an anesthetic, pure direction. But what is really interesting about this episode is circumstances came in that clearly, beyond just what the characters were saying, that clearly said, Spock, there is more you need to be thinking about. And that is rare. So, that highlighted a different aspect of, what we know about Spock. So, that was a little different.
Yeah, and I like Bones always needling at him. Like, very early on, he's like, oh, Spock, this is the perfect chance for you to prove that your logic's superior over everything. And poor Spock's just like, oh, I really have no interest in command. Like, I'm just doing this as that's what needs to be done.
That's one of the things that I remember from the movies, is that they were always back and forth, or usually Bones tried to have the last word.
Those two, I mean, throughout the series, it is an interesting psychological exercise to watch them. And it's also just fun. It's just fun. I don't know which side you might be on, but, they are constantly going at it. And it's that's really one of the exciting things about the characters of original series Trek, is that they sort of represent certain kind of archetypes. And it is not as simple as do you agree with them or do you disagree with them. They bring like a whole trajectory of humanity with them. And so you see, okay, they represent this here, they represent that there, and that it's rare that anyone is singularly right. It is merely, you're seeing a different perspective, and sometimes one perspective works and sometimes it doesn't. So, to see it manifest in the characters in a fun way, and it being as big and as important as it is in terms of, this is humanity, this is rationality, this is, leadership and taking risks, and how all of that fits together to become the humanity. It's fun.
It's kind of funny too, because when they all think that they're going to die, which they are true military troopers, because no one can just sit there. Okay, we're going to die in 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. Even then, Bones has to have the last word.
Oh yeah.
That might be the last action you ever do. Could you just shut up, Bones? Not now, Bones.
There's so many times where, they go after Spock for doing something human, and he just turns to him and says, there's no reason to be insulting. I was waiting. I couldn't remember if he was going to say that in this episode or not, but it's typical that whenever he's called on doing something emotional or something human, he just turns to him and says, I see no reason for insults. So,
And, at first I thought, hey, they're all laughing at him in the end. That's mean. And then I thought, you know what, Sean? He deserves it. He is kind of stuck up.
He is.
I do have a question, though. So Spock decided to jettison the fuel of the shuttle and set it on fire so that they would see it from the Enterprise, which they did. Mm-hmm. How is that more emotional than logical? I mean, you are creating a fireworks. It's a flare gun. I think. Does somebody say that? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Why is that not logical? I am a little confused by that.
Hey, Spock was too. But I guess their point is, oh, you thought this was a hopeless act that wouldn't do anything, so why even bother doing it? How is that logical?
Right. There's no guarantee that risking this was going to be of benefit. And so, maybe it seems more rational to just orbit the planet and, give it as much time as possible. There's no, we don't know if the ship is out there. And yet he sacrificed one path, which is a longer orbit, full trip around the planet, for this. He gambled like Scotty said. Well, you took a gamble. It was a good gamble, Spock. But the fact that he gambled is what was shocking for the rational. And throughout this episode, he had taken, I guess, what you would consider the safer path, or the more thought through path. And look, I mean, we lost 2 crew members; they were stuck down there. So Spock is putting 2 and 2 together that maybe it's time to get a little less rational. But that was the highlight.
Okay.
But to be fair to Spock, I mean, that does seem like the more logical choice. I mean, it's either just wait to die, or potentially die faster, but at least be like one last proactive move. So I do think it's the logical move. But they sure shared a laugh. They were laughing real hard. Even Scotty in the corner, he was wiping tears. Like, oh.
They were actually laughing because they were thinking about earlier that day when William Shatner fell down the stairs or something. That's what they were really laughing about.
I will simply say that was a 60s, 70s closing sitcom laugh.
Yes.
I mean, that was going on. I forgot.
I know.
Any episode of Murder, She Wrote.
In every episode of Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
It's Jessica laughing.
Oh, and I guess since we don't get too much of Kirk, I appreciate the stuff we do get with him on the side there. But I was wondering if they were doing a little bit of a parallel with maybe this is a different version of the Spock type or archetype, with that commissioner who maybe he's not like driven by logic, but he's like super by the book. He's constantly counting on the time. He's coding regulations about how he's going to take command if they don't obey his orders. But at least Spock is kind of working towards, well, actually, I guess that guy, he's going there for what? Is it a plague?
Yeah, he's worried about his people. He's worried about his people and trying to make sure they get medicine.
And justifiably so. I think I understand where the guy's coming from. You've got 7 people. I've got a whole planet to save.
Yeah, so that does make him more interesting then. Yeah. Because they kind of play him as just like, oh, look at this asshole just in the corner. He's so callous. But he's kind of doing the same rationale as Spock is throughout the episode.
He's just kind of annoying.
Yeah.
You have 21 hours, Captain.
Like, get off his back, man. Like, he's watching the clock.
Yeah.
And his haircut. There was one moment where I'm like, "Ooh, Kirk being mean." When oh gosh, I can't remember the question he asks. He asks Uhura. Did I pronounce her name right? Uhura.
Uhura.
Uhura. Okay. He asks her a question, and she says, "Well, they weren't doing that before." And Kirk goes, "Well, I need it now." Whoa, dude! Maybe he wasn't that loud, but he does snap back at her.
Yeah, he's emotional that way. When the pressure's on, he'll do that kind of stuff. So that is very Kirk.
The one character, and this will not be the first time I say this, that I felt kind of bad for because they didn't do anything with her. I don't even know her name. The lady that was one of the 7. All she did, I mean, did she? I think did she serve drinks at one point? Like, oh, I'll make the coffee, or am I that? That's probably just in my mind.
I do not recall her serving drinks, but she spent a lot of time on the communicators calling home. So
that's okay. Okay, so she had a function. Okay, this is true.
Yeah, the yeoman. She's almost like the secretary, taking notes.
Exactly. It's remember it was the 60s, so they in some ways they were progressive, but in some ways you can clearly see the era in which it was filmed. So.
Yeah, I was wondering if you know, Carl, because I was like, oh, that should have been Yeoman Rand. But I can't remember if the actress got fired by this point with her drinking problems on the set. Can't remember if it was this season or the second season.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of intrigue going on behind the scenes. I can't remember if she was still on at this point. I can't remember if she was a fill-in for Rand or not.
But it was too bad they didn't do anything with her. Like it seemed like they were giving everybody something. But yeah, she was just,
yeah. And Sean, is a little something else is kind of interesting. I'm sure you've probably seen the jokes regarding Star Trek, but whenever the crew and other folks beam down to planets, particular ones with, like smoke or rocks and things, everybody ain't gonna make it back. Everybody ain't gonna make it back.
Right.
Generally,
Right, yeah.
when you see the episodes and this is happening, you don't get as much development in those characters as you did. So you brought out early that, everybody seemed to feel, you really felt like you got to know the characters here. It was actually surprising how much we got to learn about the Galileo 7's crew. That is actually kind of unusual when you think about original series. There's always, folks, the security officers or backup people, and they'll say like one or two things, and then, they go walk behind a rock and there's a scream. But,
Yeah.
like the first guy.
Yeah. But even the first guy, we knew enough about him to, the tension that he was having with Spock, and, how he and Boma were looking at each other, and trying to, saying, this dude, I don't know about this. There was a lot more depth to those guys than we normally see with, the secondary crew like that. So, you brought up a good point that, it was a good episode that we got to see that, but it's actually kind of rare when folks are going down to a planet like that we get the, C and D plots with them, at least enough to know what they're feeling. So that was a good call. That was actually a little rare.
It's interesting.
Yeah, but the poor Spock, he was sure getting the raw end of the stick. I mean, the xenophobia does feel just intense towards him.
Really?
Like, there's no consideration at all about just his, he's a Vulcan different ways. It's just the way that their culture is.
Oh,
like, what the hell's wrong with you, you careless bastard?
Okay.
That kind of talk.
We get to know him more and more as the series goes on, and of course he starts to meet us more and more halfway in terms of appreciating, his human side. But yeah, early on they're a little rough on him. And I guess the audience was accepting of that in the beginning. Spock did have a certain odd coolness to him in the beginning that, that audiences at that time may not have been able to relate to entirely. But, over time, we all love Spock now, we appreciate him for who he is. But when it's a new character in the 60s and he looks like a devil running around, it was easy for folks to project things on him and to have a feeling about him that was overcome during the series.
Yeah, I do think it's an interesting test of the chain of command, though, because he is the one in charge, and almost right from the start, I mean, they're listening to what he's saying, but they'll have little side looks, side comments about their superior officer, and yeah, Boma especially just openly challenges him many times. So it's a little like, you'd think that they'd still be more respectful of the chain of command, but I guess this is a Vulcan, so who can trust those green-blooded bastards type of deal.
Is Spock the first mate or whatever Riker was in Next Generation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, the first officer.
For the longest time, I thought, when I was young, I thought that he was the doctor. Then I realized that Dr. Spock was somebody completely different. I thought they were one and the same. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, now I understand Steve's jokes. Every now and again he pulls that out. Oh, who is that again, Sean? Is it Dr. Spock? And I never knew what he was talking about with that.
So, Caleb, what was it that brought you to this episode? Why'd you choose this one?
Oh, I mean, I always loved the banter between Spock and Bones. Some of that stuff is just so funny. Even just the looks that they give each other will just send me into laughter. And so I remembered that Sean was having some issues with Spock in Strange New Worlds, and I was like, okay, I feel like maybe he just hasn't seen the stuff to make him love Spock the way that I do. And so I was like, okay, I'll take a gamble. I'll pull this episode out, and there's a chance that maybe you won't like it since you don't like Spock. But
no, this was good. And, watching Leonard Nimoy as Spock, no problem at all. I just think that it's, by the time that when I saw Strange New Worlds, I was like, okay, I get all the Spock stuff. Everybody knows logic. Every episode that has something to do with Spock has to do with the fact, it's logic since this is the OG, I really don't mind. This was something new back then,
Yeah.
That would be like complaining about, I don't know, Psycho because they didn't actually show her being stabbed. maybe that was a bad comparison.
Yeah, screw that movie.
I get where you're going, right? You see, when it's the prototype and when it's defining it, they get to set the rules. They get to set the canon. And then after that, you got to fall in. Mm-hmm. True. Respect the canon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Spock getting a lot of chance to be tested and, getting that chance to lead, being the command. It would definitely, I would say, maybe not the captain that I would want, because it seems to just have some issues with understanding the room.
Mm-hmm.
He can't read personal cues. And
that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, he doesn't instill confidence, but you'd still hope that they would be a little bit more respectful to the person in charge. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, we see him grow throughout the series. This is relatively still early on. So, Spock had stuff to learn at this time. And, from what we come to know of him, he is more tolerant of the balance as he as time moves on. Mm. So, but yeah, he's looking a little green, no pun intended, in this first this situation. Really, everything was against him, and how he dealt with it in the end. He rolled the dice. He rolled the dice, which, if he truly adhered to all of the logic, maybe he might not have done that. So they're trying to show a little growth.
Yeah. I did like some of the moments, though, where he really just put his foot in it. Like when they first discover their dead crewman, he just picks up the spear, doesn't say anything about the dead bodies, looking at the blood, and just, this type of spear, this indicates that they're from this certain age. And they're all just like, what the hell? Like, you don't care at all about this dead guy? He just kept doing moments like that.
But isn't it kind of like Star Trek anyway? Because every episode somebody gets killed, and a lot of times there's no reaction to it. Like, let's get on with what we were doing.
Well, you're going to get you'll get a contemplative pause from the captain, though. You may, but he'll steer plaintively off momentarily and then go on with what he was doing. Spock didn't even give him the plaintive stare. He was just like, grab the phaser. We got to get out of here.
It's funny when you said plaintive stare, because it's running on the TV right now, and that's exactly what they were showing when you said that.
Okay. Who's plaintive stare? Who was doing it? Who was
Kirk's plaintive, he's looking off into the corner of the room.
Yeah, if it's Kirk.
Reacting. Yeah.
You're going to get some plaintive stares from Captain Kirk. It's his go-to angle.
Yeah, and I like the spotlight for Scotty as well, because Scotty and Spock, they share a similar mindset to some degree, with that more prioritizing mechanical stuff, focusing on the needs at hand rather than maybe your emotions. Mm-hmm. And so the two of them getting to work together so close, I liked. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, somehow he manages to put together the fuel with the phaser fire. I was like, hey, that's kind of inventive. I like to see that. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was nice for him.
Here's a question, because it's when you mention this combination of characters, do they do that a lot in this show? I'm thinking of something like Lost, like they'll take two characters that have never been together and all of a sudden they form a relationship, maybe just during that episode. Do they juggle around with the characters like this and maybe put them in like an isolated place together so they have time to bond? Or
while they do that, not as much as they should. So you're going to see a lot of that between Kirk and Spock, or Spock and McCoy, and sometimes Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. We don't see enough of them bringing in Scotty and Sulu and Uhura. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of times where that happens, but through original series Star Trek, while they do a better job of highlighting characters by that, by situating them together, it's you clearly see who the main three are with original series. And when we go back and look at it, we really do see a lot of missed opportunities where we want to know more about Sulu and Uhura and Scotty, that we don't get that much of them. But there are moments.
I think that because the movies were it was still William Shatner as the main guy, mm-hmm. and then maybe Spock, but it really was more of an ensemble effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They bring it up more and more as the movies go on.
Mm-hmm.
But they came from a place where that wasn't necessarily the case. I again, when you go back and watch original series as many times as I've seen them, and over all of the eras of Star Trek, when I go back to watch original series, I say I really wish we had gotten more of this character, more of this character, more of this character.
Yeah.
I do miss that when I see what they've done. But there's an awful lot of action, a lot of exciting things happening with the main three. So, quick answer is yes, not enough though.
Okay.
Yeah, and similar to classic Doctor Who, there's tons of times where we just fall into like various other stories, and our crew is just kind of the vehicle to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about those stories that we arrive at rather than the characters themselves.
Okay. Interesting.
Oh, and by the way, I do love the setting for this one. I always like these just random planets. It's all smoky, all the fake rocks. I just think that's fun.
Well, the smoke is new. The fake rocks of various colors. You're going to see this planet wherever you go. So, is it a ravine? Is it an open area surrounded by the rocks, or are we in a like a cave with rocks? But strange, the same rocks, same styrofoam rocks, wherever we go.
I also find it interesting that that first guy that gets killed, that thing goes right through and kills him instantly. But there's one. Did you see the one that hits Gitano's head?
It bounces right off and fractures like styrofoam. Oh, that was. Listen, we got to let it go. We got to let it go.
I know.
If that hit was glancing blow is not exactly the term I would use to describe the physics. Was what happened there? It just sort of bounced off his head and splintered like foam, and they just kept on running. I got some questions about to ask the crew about, was he all right after that? Because it is foam. It is foam.
But it hit him.
Had contact with that dude's head in that scene, and I'm like, dude, are you all right? It's just
A saving character didn't react. Yeah, maybe it knocked him out.
Nope. He's supposed to be I think it was a dead body at that point. Supposed to be a dead body, but yeah, he got hit with that foam.
Yeah, I did put in my notes that they should have just had the first guy throwing the spears, because all the spears we see later, I mean, Spock is right there, and they're missing every shot. It's just like,
yeah. Bouncing off of rocks, 4 at a time coming at him. Yeah, they lost their good archer.
Yeah, but I always appreciate these kind of stories. It was making me think a little bit of, what's that? Flight of the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
I always like those stories where it's just their little ship broken down and they got to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as intensive as that movie is, but I just like that mode of story.
Yeah. That the tension of the situation, and getting an opportunity to see the characters interact. It very, very much feels like Flight of the Phoenix. Now that you mention it, very much so. Yeah, Scotty just leaned over and said, "I've only built model shuttlecrafts." That would have been it. We would have known right away.
I also love just getting a chance to really get so many cool shots of that shuttlecraft, because, oh boy, I've always loved the way those things looked. I'd love to get a model of those one day, because those shuttlecrafts are just cool as hell.
It's true, and it's rare that we get to see this much of the shuttlecraft. There are a couple of other episodes where it's in there, but yeah, I think this is one where we really spend time in it. See the floor, see all that, the mechanics and whatnot. I don't think we spend this much time in a shuttlecraft again, really.
Yeah, and you can tell they were proud of that door that they designed, because they do a nice shot right on it. It was cool. I liked it. It was cool.
Not exactly a hermetic seal, but I go with it. We're gonna go with it every time.
I think it also needs some decorations. It's just like a blank wall. It looks like the cockpit from Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
Did you notice when they take off, using the power from the phasers, the craft jolts a little bit, and the lady, I still don't even know, what's her name?
I can't remember her name.
Yeah, I don't. She falls down on her knees on the floor. And
Well, that's because they.
Nobody bothers to help her up.
Well, she's a yeoman. She's got this. She's got this.
Yeah, well, she's used to being on her knees. Let's all just sit down.
No.
Oh my god. Oh no.
Let's
not talk about Gene Roddenberry and his ways.
I feel like they made her do that on purpose just so like we could see more of her legs or something. I'm not saying that that's what they were up to, but you know.
Well, there is a gratuitousness when it comes to some of the ladies in original series. They
okay.
They showcase quite a bit.
Yeah. Every time I go back to these in HD, I'm always noticing Uhura whenever she bends over to press a higher up dial. I'm like, oh yeah, you can just see right under that mini skirt. I missed that.
That's a short skirt. She's got a short skirt.
Oh, but those 8 men, I'm seeing a couple of them on the screen right now. Yeah, it's wise they didn't focus on them too much. We never really get a push back. Yeah, that wasn't working so well.
There is a compromise with the original Trek where sometimes they do the Jaws thing where we don't actually see the monster or, it's just a hint of the monster. And then sometimes we get, full on monster action. What was really strange was the compromise here. I really think they shouldn't have gone so much. They could have gotten away with, Jaws like shadows or arm or a piece of it. This just looks like a dude in like a fur moo-moo, from the side. You can just kind of make out his face. I'm like, no, guys. You didn't do it on this one. So
I was thinking of Papa Jupiter from The Hills Have Eyes. It was making me think of that a lot.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Oh, that's what we need, a Star Trek episode that's actually a retelling of The Hills Have Eyes. That'll be great.
We were talking about some of the filming of those guys. I love some of the stuff on the bridge. They got it so well down at this point in the production. They could just swivel between all the people so well. I love all that stuff. Some cool zooms too.
The dramatic motion of the bridge stuff is so much fun. I mean, between the clarity, the dramatic zooms and pans, the lighting, I kind of get like addicted to the look of original series Star Trek. There's just something about the vibrancy of the color and again, how that lighting cuts across their eyes and the use of shadow that is, distinctive of that time, because there are other shows that you can kind of feel that same thing. You can feel it in that era, but they just do it so well with Trek. Again, the lighting, the colors, the motion is very, very distinctive. And yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I've been recently watching a lot of Star Trek, the animated series, and I feel like they do that. They like take it to the nines. That show it's so poppy and cool. Yeah, I always love going back to this era.
And they're not limited by the production budgets that they had on the show. So you see things there that it's like, oh, that's what they were trying to do when when you see it in the animated versus what was the original.
Yeah, no, I'll admit it. I really appreciate Strange New Worlds trying to bring a lot of that back. They try to have as poppy a color palette as this. I still don't think they quite reach it, but they're doing a good job at least moving in that direction.
What's really fun is sometimes they go to planets on Strange New Worlds. They go to planets and they intentionally retro the planet. They do the pastel colors. They do the rocks on the horizon. I mean, they've got like whatever the equivalent of the volume is on. So they can really make this big and lifelike and real. But there are a couple of times where you can clearly see they are tipping the hat to the old planets of original series. And it's really remarkable how they're able to maintain I'm not going to say the camp, but there's a palette. There's a simplicity in a color palette. And to see that again, it really makes me smile because it's respectful of what the original series was in Strange New Worlds. It's fun to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now I'm sorry, this is just general Star Trek chit chat and not specifically about Galileo 7. What was the one that was set before, not before Strange New Worlds, the one with Scott Bakula, I think.
Enterprise, the series Enterprise.
Enterprise.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did they go for that in that one? The poppy colors and the...
Nah.
I'm going to say no. You should probably be talking to Eric about this. Enterprise was not my favorite series, but it was in some ways trapped because they had the better special effects and production value of, what was that, the early 2000s when that was happening. And so they were trying to exercise that, but at the same time, they were in a time that predates the original series Star Trek. So they've got this weird thing where they've got technology that is supposed to be before the original series Star Trek, but way better special effects in filming technology.
Yeah.
Yet they had to hold it back because it was from a previous era, and they were not, retro respectful of the look of original series. So it is an odd sort of place to be. That was one of my first criticisms about Enterprises. Why go back?
Yeah.
For us to be looking back on Star Trek, and we already have the retro nature of the original series, and then to try to go back before that, it right out the box seemed like a very difficult tightrope to walk. So, quick answer is no. In their effort to be so modern, in other words, they were really trying to take advantage of the high quality filming technology that they had, video technology, the special effects. They were trying to get away from it, but in their effort to get away from it, they lost some of the sentimental camp. But at the same time, they were trying to predate what we saw. It's a very precarious place to be. I don't know how they thought that was going to work.
Yeah, and they tried to do this thing where they tried to make them look as if they're an extension of modern astronauts. So they wear kind of like astronaut gear, sort of, like the underneath part. And they're all wearing this navy blue. It's very bland looking and just, all their jumpsuits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it lacks so much of the fun character of just the visual aesthetic of Star Trek. And it's, almost like a submarine kind of look too to the main room that they're always in, the command center. I don't know what to call it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole ship, the whole bridge, and everything has this sort of, like you said, a submarine retro look to it. But even retro isn't quite the right term.
No,
they did something different with it, but I don't know, Sean. Just start with original series, go into next gen. Then you got DS9, and then come back, and we'll properly prepare you if you want to get into things like that.
Properly prepare me?
Yeah. I mean,
no rush on Enterprise, no rush on Discovery.
Well, there's also Voyager.
Yeah, that.
And then there's I can't remember, Picard.
Oh boy,
and Strange New Worlds and Discovery.
Well, hang on now. All right, now listen. I'm giving you the order. So there's
okay, all right. Yeah. Now wait.
I'm trying to answer your question. So it's just so you know who's who. Kirk and Spock, original series first. Then comes Picard and crew. They're in the Next Generation. After Next Generation, there comes Deep Space Nine. That's Cisco and the big old space station and all the action that's happening on that.
Great.
After that comes Voyager. So that's Janeway, Captain Janeway, and their
Mrs. Columbo.
Their lost ship, lost ship out in deep space. Then after that is when we get Enterprise. Is when Bakula and crew show up for that, and then after that after Enterprise there's a big gap, a big break because folks were kind of away from TV Trek for a while.
The wilderness years.
Yep.
Then comes at long last Discovery shows up, and then from Discovery comes Strange New Worlds, which takes us right back to the original series era.
Oh, okay.
So that's the people in the order. But so in other words, you got if you I'm sorry, you said you hadn't seen many original series, but had you watched Next Gen? Had you been watching Next Generation and the other ones, or not much Trek at all?
Yes. The answer for now is yes, but I'm going to explain more about that when we come to talk about that.
Next episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay, but there's also like spin-offs like Picard, the animated.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When you said Picard, I was thinking Next Generation, but you're correct. There is actually the television series Picard, miniseries Picard that came out.
Not that many.
That you're right. I kind of blocked it out. There's 3 seasons of it. That may also take some preparation. Reach out to us before you start Picard. But before you start Enterprise, Picard, Discovery, call a Trekker, and we're gonna help you through. We're gonna help you through.
Yeah, we'll tell you what to skip. Skip first 2 seasons Enterprise, first 2 seasons Picard, all of Discovery. No, that's not fair. I haven't seen all Discovery. But
Okay.
Some caveats. Yeah.
Oh, but to highlight a couple more things for this episode, I have another few more moments that I really enjoyed. One of them, so I think it was Latimer, I think that's his name, who died, and Mr. Bowman was like, okay, Spock, even though you didn't really agree with us bringing him back and burying him, you're still the one in charge here. It's still your job to come and say a few words over the funeral. But Spock's just focused on his work. He doesn't even really want to seem like he wants to pay attention to this. He's kind of like, Bones, you take care of it. And yeah, everyone gives each other sour looks. Like, wow, this guy, man, no respect for this crew of ours as humans, as Vulcan ways. I quite like that moment.
Yeah. You were feeling the tension. We've seen the crew grapple with Spock and his, lack of emotionality many times. But again, this is a rare episode where there's some real circumstances that he has to deal with here. Most of the time his logic is in the abstract, but here, he's losing crew members left and right. They're about to die. They're stuck on the planet. So his logic is really tested here in a way that's not common for Spock. Most of the time, his rationality is right, and he can cut through a lot of stuff. Not this episode though. It's going off the rails for Spock.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, Kirk is always there to like couch it. The stuff that Spock's doing here is his usual Spock stuff, but Kirk's there as kind of a barrier between the rest of the crew to. Except for Bones, who always just sees through it and pokes at Spock. A little bully Spock. But
That's true. That's true.
Oh, and I will say, because we talked earlier in this episode about the remastered effects. Well, I put on the old effects for my my Blu-ray here, and I've been watching that throughout. And hey, it doesn't look so bad. I mean, it's definitely much degraded from the modern stuff, but it still has its kind of corny charm to it. I can still appreciate that. And it still looks leagues better than any of classic Doctor Who, just about. So,
yeah. There is a scene where they are looking at the console on board the bridge of the Enterprise, and there is a countdown that's going on. I'm very curious. The chronometer, was that digitally redone? You're looking at the original one. Was that chronometer digitally redone? Because those numbers look fantastic, and I was like, "Wait a minute, how did they do that?" So I don't know if you can see it with and if you can scrub around in the original the original effects of this. But there is just the scene where they look down at the console on the bridge, and there's some kind of like a counter or something.
Do you have a timestamp? I'm scrubbing around, but I haven't come across it just yet.
Yeah, there's some kind of countdown that's happening, and I looked at it, and man, those numbers look so pretty, and I'm like, how? Because of that era, you had like flip digits or digits that were on a reel that was turning.
Oh yes, okay.
And there's something that when I saw it, it looked so clean. I was like, that can't be how it looked, originally. So I'm just curious. This is a little aside. If you can find it, let me know.
Yeah, I'll scrub through here, but I will say just because we don't cover too much TOS in this feed, at least we haven't done it in a while. When these Blu-rays came out, oh my gosh, it was just mind-blowing to see how much they could remaster this show. It had changed it a lot in my mind because I wasn't quite at where Carl was, where I'd watch it and kind of laugh at it, but it did feel a little bit more like this hokey old show, and TNG was the more polished one.
Mm-hmm.
But oh man, the remasters just incredible.
Yeah, I had an unusual experience that, again, when I first watched original series Star Trek, it was, for me, pre-cable rabbit ear television. So I couldn't see mess anyhow, right? Just scratchy, looking through snow, trying to see it. Then I saw original series with cable. And so, finally, it looked a little clearer. I could, make stuff out. And that was even nicer. Then what was really interesting is, okay, so, you guys know I'm in the DC area. In the early 90s, the Smithsonian had an exhibit, a very big exhibit about Star Trek. And they brought, the uniforms and set pieces and all of that to the Smithsonian. And so I could finally see these things in person and close up. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, I can see the zipper on this. Wow, look how, the fabric looks a little different than I expected here, And so to see it in person, knowing that it was the original thing, there was a certain, resolution to it that I'm like, wow, okay, I guess they really did something with the camera work to make that work. And then finally to see it remastered in that era in Blu-ray, you can see it's this, the high resolution, and to see what they did in that time in motion. It's kind of the split between what I saw faded in the real world, and then it at the time well lit, but still I can make out the zippers now. I can see the makeup. I can see how the ear connect, the Spock's ear connects on the back. This sort of, I had the gradual transition is what I'm saying, from what, looked like state of the art because I couldn't see anything to, gradually to cable. Then I saw it in person. And then finally when I saw it in Blu-ray, I got to, to gradually have that world unveiled to me. So, I was gradually ramped up until finally now that it's remastered. But it could be jarring for those that did not have the gradual transition. If you just started with the rabbit ears and then all of a sudden you're watching Blu-ray, it's got to look totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, it's similar experience with Doctor Who.
And speaking of things being gradual, I did manage to track down the original counter, and it just looks like these little dice that they're turning. It looks like.
Yeah, see, that's so. Yeah, they would have like a mechanical thing. When you see the remastered version, those digits are crisp and they are just fluid. I was like, how? What? So okay, it was dice. I knew it had to be something, because when you look at the there's a scene where Spock is doing something on the console of the Galileo, and they have like a mini tape, reel-to-reel tape device up there that's turning while it's doing stuff. So they were hard on the retro. You get a real appreciation for the mechanical of the time.
Oh, but I do feel like I've maybe come to near the end of my notes. So I don't know if you guys have much more, but yeah, I'm getting ready for the close.
I've said it all. There's nothing else I feel that needs to be said.
And was there anything else that that got you excited about this particular episode? Anything else that you wanted to bring up? Because it's a classic one, but I was just when you picked it.
Well, I'm pleased with it. I was very, very surprised that I liked it as much as I did. Like, I was kind of like, oh, okay, now I have a reason to watch Star Trek. Okay, this might be fun. And Yeah, and I was really surprised that, and I remember at one point trying to watch it and getting really bored or something, and I didn't finish watching it. I'm talking about like the very first episode of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, like the cage, or
Yeah, I think so, and because I think it was on Netflix at one point, and I'm glad that I went back to it. And I think at the time I wasn't really paying that well attention to it, but yeah. I mean, now okay. So it went on to the next episode, and of course it's muted. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, what the hell are they doing? They're in like, they're talking to like they beam down to some planet, and it's like an old timey house, and Liberace is there. I need to know more.
Now, all right. Let me just back up to the first part of this. The really surprising thing about original series Star Trek is it always under promises and over delivers. Like you start watching it and you're like, I've seen this before, or where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Or even if you know like the arc, you're like, how interesting could that be? But when it starts to happen, the way it draws you in, sometimes it is the characters, sometimes it is the psychological dilemma that they have to deal with. Sometimes it is, the effects and the tension that they can create. But when you look at it in isolation and you stand back and you even when you know what the episode is going to be about, you're like, I've seen this before. Or, how are they going to make that interesting? And they always find a way to bring a certain depth to it that is surprising. So yes, that is also a common reaction. Like you said, I didn't think I was going to like this episode this much. They always do that. They find a way to kind of pull you in, and it's really quite remarkable. That's
eventually, it got to that point when I started to realize, oh, I see what this is about. This is about Spock's struggle between logic and emotion. It's about something. Because I remember that from Next Generation, they'd have like, and they would collate them. So like they'd have one episode that was about action, adventure, and all that, and then the next one was like a morality tale. But yeah, I like that.
Great thing.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're coming around to the rating section of the podcast. Does anyone have a unit of measure that we're going to stack this up against?
Giant spears!
I swear to God, I was just about to say that myself.
Giant spears is what we're going.
Even if those guys were 10 feet tall, isn't the spear still a little bit too big?
They were huge. They were. I would think they could have gotten a good accuracy with an axe or something better than hurling tree stumps at people. I
was even thinking, I can't imagine what the wound that those guys are seeing on the.
Thank you. I was like, at that scale, do you really have to sharpen them? Really? I mean, it's just you're just rubbing people at a distance with those things, because the effect of trying to sharpen an arrowhead is lost when the arrowhead is like 2 feet wide. You just lose all of the resolution of the sharpness that you go. But anyway,
and I also had a laugh when Spock got pinned down by that rock.
Well, they did miracles with the physics of that rock, because you could see bouncing spears, all of the other boulders were kind of bouncing around. That one at least stuck. I'm really curious how they managed to hold that rock down when it hit Spock's leg, knowing what it was made out of, because everything else was bouncing around. So they something happened. There was rope or magnets or something, because the way that rock came down, it clearly wasn't heavy, but it didn't bounce. So I'm like, how did they do that? How did they pull that off? But yes, the rock is a good one.
You could see Bones' hand pushing it in, like just the foam or whatever it was.
See, this is the kind of fun I used to have when I was watching the original series. I was like, that's ridiculous. Who's going to buy this? So, they got me. They got me in the end.
Yeah.
Pardon me. That's on my end. That's thunder. Sorry, everybody. I can't control it.
Oh no, the storm's coming your way. Well, maybe you should take it away. What is your rating out of 5 giant spears?
Hell, I'll give this 4.5 giant spears. Was it the best thing ever? No. But damn, if I enjoyed myself. I mean, look, I bought the first season on Blu-ray. I mean, it wasn't that expensive, but thoroughly enjoyed this. And again, going back to Carl, what you said, I didn't realize that Star Trek, the original series, had messages like this.
Man.
I thought it was just like, phaser blasts and bad alien costumes. And
Dude,
there's probably a few episodes like that.
The original series Trek is downright Shakespearean. I mean, literally, you're going to have morality plays and, sometimes heavy-handed, sometimes subtle. Original series Trek is about something, and there's a reason that it has survived. What's like almost 75 years now? I mean, it's been with us a long time, and there's a reason. So you're in for a treat. I think the next episode I'll watch is this one called Spock's Brain. Excellent.
I listen to a podcast where sometimes they talk about Star Trek a lot, and somebody said something about Spock's brain. They had Walter Koenig on, and they asked him about Spock's brain. Yeah,
that's cool.
You should watch Let This Be Your Last Battlefield if you want some very on the nose.
No, that's subtle. No one knows what that one is about. Look, you should watch them in order. I ain't jumping around and trying to talk about Squire Gothos, which is the next one. No, just watch them in order. Sit down, watch them in order.
Indeed.
And you will you got some catching up to do, but you're in for a treat.
Yeah, and I guess speaking of order, I guess I'd be next in the line if we were doing it. Well, no, actually not. But I think I'll agree with you, Sean. I'll go with the 4.5 as well. It's not the best episode of Star Trek there's ever been, but I had a smile on my face the whole time. So many fun little bits of dialogue, so many fun exchanges, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So 4 to 5.
All right. I'm going to give it 4. 4 spears. And I'm lowballing it only because there are a couple of other episodes where we get to see Spock and the logic crumble and the crew come together around that they do it just a little bit better. And those are some of my favorite episodes. But this one in a single episode encapsulates so much about what makes Star Trek great. So I'm being conservative, and I will simply give it a 4. But it's a great episode.
Okay.
Yeah, just as a final note before we close it out, I will say when I was watching this, I just kept getting this itching to watch this movie, and I couldn't remember the title of it for a while. It took me maybe halfway through the episode before it finally popped into my head. And that's the Mario Bava, the famed Italian filmmaker. He made this weird little sci-fi movie called Planet of the Vampires.
Planet of the Vampires?
It's one of the movies that's inspired.
Planet of the
Planet of the Vampires.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the movies that inspired the space jockey scene in Aliens. And it's set on a planet very much like this, and some very kooky costuming. So high recommend for that as well if you want a fun, cheesy 60s sci-fi movie.
I'll check it out. I like that.
If memory serves, I don't think there are any vampires in Planet of the Vampires. Are there?
I don't think they're technically vampires. Yeah, I think they're like undead.
Okay.
But...
Hey, no spoiling it, guys. I mean, this is
there you go.
exciting. You don't give it away.
So, are going to have any vampires in your vampire film?
Yeah, it's like Chud 2, Bud the Chud. There's no Chuds in that. They're just zombies.
Are you for real? Is that a real movie?
Oh, yes.
High recommend for a piece of crap movie. Chud 2, Bud the Chud. Yeah.
Well, only after you've seen the original Chud. Otherwise, it's all lost. So,
Well, but I guess closing out the show today, this is Caleb.
This is Carl.
And this is Sean.
And until next time,
cover your head when the spears come at you.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.